had a message recently from a member over on Patreon, and they said they struggle to get outside to paint on location, and how can they get good references to work from. And so all these photographs I'm going to show on the screen now were taken literally just outside my back door. So I look up at the sky, and then if I see an interesting shape, then I'll always take a photo of it. Now, there's not really much in the way of land, my neighbours' houses and some trees at the end of my garden, and that's about it. But I find that if you can get a really good reference for a sky, you can lay that down, and then you can always just tag a little piece of land on underneath. You can make it up as you go along, or you can find another reference and piece the two together, so superimpose one on top of the other. So I'll do a few paintings now working from these photographs that I took, so only using the sky, and then I'll tag something else on underneath. So I'll put the photo that I'm working from somewhere up in the top left of the screen. And so I'm going to work on a 9x12 piece of cold pressed paper, and I've wet it all over in the mist bottle, and I've knocked out the large drips just using my hand. And so using this photo as a reference, very loose reference, I don't need to copy it exactly. I'm not looking to create an exact replica of the photograph, but just bringing in a little bit of blue for the top of the sky. Now the paper's quite wet, so it's running down a little bit, but that's great, that's what I want. Now bring in some raw sienna as well. Lay that in again, very wet, using a mop brush as well, so lots of water. Drag that paint around, bring it all the way down. Let's lay a little bit of that blue down at the bottom of the sheet as well. I think I'll go for a coastal type scene, so reflect some of that sky colour down into what will be some water in the finished painting. Now I've allowed that paint to dry off a little bit naturally, so I've not used a hairdryer or a heat gun or anything like that. Now just waited until the shine has gone off of the paper, so I can lay some of these cloud shapes in without them running around too much. I want to get some slightly hard edges on there. So I made a mixture of ultramarine and light red. Now mix that up fairly dark. And glancing at that reference, like I said, I don't need to go for an exact copy of it, just using it as inspiration for some interesting shapes. Now I really like the shapes in these clouds. It's the vertical element there is really quite interesting, and I'm not matching the colour either that's in the photograph. I'm making these a little bit more bold, so varying that colour now, more light red, a little bit of cobalt this time. And there's a little bit of moisture left in the paper, so you can see it's softening naturally on its own. Dragging that paint around, I'm using a synthetic rigger brush for this stage. Now really just trying to capture the essence of the photograph, and only using it as a little bit of inspiration for some interesting shapes that I can lay down into a sky, and then I can tag on that very simple bit of land at the end. So really it's a painting more about the sky than anything else. Switch back to a slightly larger brush, and I can start laying down some shapes in the land, or in the water I should say. So drag a reflection of some of that cloud across, just a few horizontal marks really. Don't need to be literal about this at all, don't need to make an exact mirror, Okay, I'll dry that off. Okay, it's the sky and the water completed, so I can bring it all together now with some simple touches down in the land, a few little hard edges. So I've got some more ultramarine and light red, so pretty much the same colours as I used in the clouds. And let's bring in a little bit of distance. And now soften that off with a little bit of water in the brush. Tiny little bit more paint in there. And bring that out all the way out to the right, and it almost disappearing off into the distance. Now picked up a little bit of burnt sienna, mix that in with some of that blue that's still in the palette. And dry brush in, tiny little bit of land. Maybe it's some little sandbanks or something going on there. Now I haven't got a reference for this stage, I'm making this up as I go along. Now really just a little bit of water in the brush to continue that distance out all the way out to the right. Let's mix up a little bit of dark paint now, some ultramarine and burnt sienna. And I'll put in a shape of a few boats. So a very simple little silhouette. Now this gives the painting a little bit of scale, so if I make the boat shape fairly small, instantly makes the scene seem quite a bit larger. Let's go into some of that blue and add a few more boats off into the distance. Bring in a few little mast shapes here and there as well. That instantly pushes that distance back as well. And drop in some very simple little reflections. And let's reflect a few of these masts in the water as well. Don't need to do all of them. Just acts to make that water area seem tiny little bit wetter, I suppose. Okay, I'll move on. Let's just paint from another photograph. So there's, again, I'll put it up in the top left of the screen somewhere. Now it's really nothing more than a simple cloud shape, but it's, again, quite an interesting shape. So I'll try and make something out of this. I've brought in quite a lot of water on the paper this time. I've not bothered knocking out the drips either, so let's get a really wet wash going on for this one. So I picked up some cobalt, mixed it in with some of the greys in the palette. So lots of water. Just touch a little bit of light red in there as well. And it's made a soft grey. Let's go for quite a misty feel in this one, I think. Now really drawing with the brush, so I'll bring the sky down to the horizon line. I think I'll turn this one into a beach scene. So bring the sky wash all the way around and the curve of the beach coming round from the left round to the right, and I've left the sea area white for now. Let's drop a little bit more light red, a little bit more cobalt blue, and so lay in some of the sand area. Now again, it's very wet. I'm waiting for that sky to dry off a tiny little bit before I work back into it. So I've got some more blue, some more light red. And let's start dragging some of these cloud shapes in. And again, not trying to copy the photo exactly, using it as inspiration. So let's get some of those vertical marks going in across the top. Let's lay some of this large cloud shape in. Now, once again, don't need to copy the colours at all. I can make that up as I go. But it's an interesting shape, and I think if you take a photograph of a cloud and it's got an interesting shape going on in it, that's half the work done for you, really. And you can make a sky painting and be very simple with the land that you tag on underneath. So varying that colour, more blue, more red. And I quite like it when you find a shape in the sky. It's quite an unusual shape, and it makes for a very interesting painting. Not everything has to be white fluffy clouds and blue skies and all that kind of thing. It gets a little bit boring, so try and find interesting shapes. There's always something going on in the sky if you take the time to have a look. So I've laid some darker paint into this shape, and let's drag a few darker areas across the top as well. And it's really quite an unusual sky, but I think it works. And doing these little sketches, it's nice to find out what works and what doesn't. Okay, I dried the brush off. Let's mop up that little bead there before I lay the colour into the sea. I don't want it to run and cause little blooms or anything like that. So mop up that little extra bit of water. Now, same colours again, really, more cobalt, more light red. Mix it up a little bit darker and start bringing in some colour for the sea. And make sure I leave a little area coming off diagonally from right to left for some waves breaking across the shore. Now, allowing that sea to touch the sky wash as well, so it will soften across the top. Okay, I think I need that to be dry now before I move on to the next stage. Okay, let's add in the beach and finish this little sketch off. So I've got some ultramarine and a little bit of burnt sienna. Let's bring in a broken line for a sand dune. Touch a bit more burnt sienna in there. Now bring that down. Just want to just about meet the sea area there. A little bit of raw sienna into that mixture. I can lay over a little area for the beach. Now again, making sure I don't completely cover up that white area that I left behind for the waves breaking, and allowing little bits of dry brush to happen in that area as well. So I've got an instant shoreline coming around, making the paint slightly darker down in the foreground. And that helps with perspective. Drag a little bit of dry brush texture across there as well, so little waves breaking on the shore. And just touch a few little marks in the foreground, a few little lines ever so slightly leading the eye in towards the cloud, which really is the focal point of the painting anyway. There's a couple of little highlights there. I can drop some dark in under, maybe that'll look like some little pebbles. Don't need to do too much of any of this kind of stuff. Don't want to overcomplicate it. Let's keep it as a simple sketch. I think I need something up in the sky, something a little extra, so I'll pop in a couple of seagulls. I think that'll do. I think 2 is enough. Very peaceful little sketch there. Okay, let's move on. Let's do another one. I think there's time to paint a third. So I'll work from the sunset that I took out of my studio window a few days ago. And again, I'll put it on the screen on the top left. And now sunset's a good opportunity really to get a bit crazy and get a little bit bolder with the colour. So let's get some raw sienna and some cadmium yellow. So quite a bright yellowy orange colour. Touch a bit of light red in there as well. Let's get some real strong glow up in this sky, I think. Just touch a bit of cobalt blue up into the top right. Drag some of that around. It's been very loose and quick with this one, I think. Let's get some more raw sienna and light red. It's making one big cohesive graded wash, and I can bring that all the way down. A little bit more cadmium yellow. Very strong, bright yellow colour. Just touch more light red into that as well. Now bring that wash, I can bring it all the way down, across where I'll add a little bit of land at the bottom, but I can bring that colour all the way down, and then I can lay some dark shapes over the top. So very vibrant, very bright colours. Now I want to add some of these cloud shapes in over the top of this. I'm going to use a large sable rigger. So I've got some ultramarine. And a little bit of alizarin this time. And now that makes quite a very dark mauve blue type colour, so I can lay that in. It's all still fairly wet, so I want some of these shapes to run and blend, soften around the edges. allow it all to go pretty much where it wants. Paper started to dry off towards the top, so I've got a few little dry brush marks happening there, but that's fine, quite like that. More ultramarine, more alizarin. Let's bring in that large cloud shape from the right hand side. Now, same colours, vary the mixture ever so slightly every time I go back. And moving the brush around, really holding the brush quite far back and allowing the bristles of the brush to make the marks, really, rather than painting them myself, if that makes sense. Just touch a little bit of cobalt blue in and make a slightly grayer mixture. So again, getting as much variation in these colours as I can. Let's go for a very low horizon line on this one, so I can bring this sky down quite far. This is a similar way to how I would work if I was working on location. So working very quickly to get the basic elements down. Now I'm not even going to bother drying this one before I move on to the land. So I'll put in some distance now. I've got some cobalt blue and I'm going to touch some chromium oxide green into that. It's a colour I've been testing out recently in place of Viridian, and experimental, really, just different way of mixing greens. But it works quite nicely with a cobalt blue, makes a nice turquoise blue type colour. Let's grab a little bit more of that chromium oxide and touch some raw sienna in there as well. Now this is all still fairly wet, so it's starting to run down. But like I said, if I'm working on location and creating very quick sketches, I fairly often don't wait for it to fully dry. I want to capture some elements and atmosphere, so I'll lay it all down in one wash and then I can take that back and work into a bigger painting, a more detailed painting, more considered, where I could take a little bit more time to allow everything to dry. So this is a way of laying down a very quick sketch. So I mixed up some dark, ultramarine, burnt sienna. Let's lay some dark shapes into the land. I'm thinking of the marshes at Norfolk, where you quite often see boats on the marsh at low tide. So I'll try and capture some of that atmosphere, some of that feeling. So I'm not really painting any objects at all. It's a series of shapes, light and dark. Let's get some vertical elements in there, so a few masts. Don't even really need to paint any boats. It's sometimes amazing what you can get away with, really. I mean, this is completely wet into wet, but laying in all these series of shapes, a few horizontals and then a couple of vertical masts, and it brings it together, and it's somehow, you know what you're looking at, you know it's a marsh type scene. That's a type of thing I've painted 1,000 times before, so I know where I'm going with this kind of thing. If I'd waited for it to dry, it'd probably look a little bit more convincing, to be honest with you, but this type of sketch is quite a nice way to work. Okay, that's the demo pretty much finished, so I'll just talk you through what I did. So laid in very simple sky really, but using my photograph as reference and then putting a simple kind of coastal scene, so a few boats, same kind of thing. So using nothing but a shape of a cloud that I found interesting, laying that down in very wet, and then tagging a beach scene underneath. And now to the sunset, very loose, very quick sketch. But again, using my photo as a very basic reference and then turning it into something completely different by adding the marsh scene underneath. And so I hope that answered your question, how you can find references if you can't necessarily get out. Pretty much everybody's got a window or a back door or something like that, and you can go outside, have a look up at the sky as often as you can, take a photograph if there's an interesting shape, and then lay that down on the paper, and then use your imagination and add something underneath. Or you can maybe find a different reference somewhere like Pixabay or Wiki Commons, and then combine elements from 2 or more photographs and really just have fun with it and see if you can make some scenes up. But anyway, I hope that helps. Hope that answered the question. I hope you liked the demo. If you did, please let me know in the comments. Please give the video a like and all that kind of stuff, and subscribe if you haven't already. And check me out over on Patreon as well, where I have a different video every week, an exclusive video. So check that out. It's also on YouTube memberships as well. But anyway, thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you next week. Cheers then.